So everybody has a mentor,
Mhm.
whether you think you have or not. What bit of information that you wish you had taken, but you didn't at the time?
The advice that I got given was to be patient and to know also that a lot of things come in time. And for me, I was like, no, they don't. I have to do this. And I pushed myself to the brink.
Welcome, Deni, to the podcast. Excited to have you on, especially as an old colleague. So welcome to the podcast, and let's take us back to the Marble recruitment days.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I guess early on in my career, probably, I guess the first full-time job that I had was at Marble with yourself, but across the country. And, I learned a lot from that experience, but it was never really right for me. I got a bit restless and recruitment was never really, unfortunately, Tom, my passion.
Yeah.
I'd always kind of leaned more towards that health and sustainability and environmental causes. I wish I was money motivated, but unfortunately that's just not who I am as a person. So I kind of moved on after it was only really 6 months, just because I got restless and wanted to do more of what was really right for me. And then I moved on to a not-for-profit at Western Australia, Rural Health West. Worked there for about 1.5 to 2 years, can't remember exactly, mainly doing a lot of population health, medical education, looking at scholarships for medical students or health professionals in regional WA, which was really more aligned with the things that I care about as a person rather than a professional, right? And kind of moved around within that organization for a little bit and then kind of realized I'd kind of capped out in terms of what I was going to learn and how much further I could go. So moved on again after that 1.5 years to a job in a hospital where I accidentally was doing a lot more of the same that I was doing previously, but more focused on medical education of junior doctors. And I just really wasn't expecting that at all. So that kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah. What about, let me just take it back to the Marble days, where
Yeah.
you figured out, this wasn't right for yourself, the industry. What was your thought process in changing industries? So you've obviously done some self-evaluation, you've taken yourself back and you've said, right, I want to go into this direction. So what made you go to, say, Rural Health West? How did you navigate to that sort of?
Yeah, so for my bachelor's degree, I'd done population health and political science. So it was kind of something that I already knew quite a bit about. I was really keen to get into. The biggest thing that I learned while I was at Marble was that I'm really people motivated. I do things because they align to my values. And that was really a hard learning because I wish I could be more money motivated than I was.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just realized that what I was doing in recruitment didn't really align to what I wanted to be doing, which was more of that long-term development. So the reason I moved to a not-for-profit, well, I guess that's in the name, right? It's a not-for-profit. You feel good doing what you're doing. And it's more purpose-driven in terms of health outcomes for communities, which again was something that I just had cared about my whole life. And I realized that recruitment, I wasn't able to, in the role I was in, give people, I guess, like a long-term sustainable solution to one of their problems, which was employment. So I thought I'd tackle a different problem, to be completely honest.
Sure. I mean, don't this is what it's all about, just you have to go through, like I said, self-evaluation, seeing where and it's fine because like when you was at that point in your career, you was in the exploration stage anyway, where you was basically finding your feet in the workplace, and then you found out quite early. So it's very good that you caught it early, because you might have gone, you might have tried to stick it out for a while, and then that might have chewed you up and spat you back out. So because we know what recruitment's like, it's a very tedious industry. Very rewarding, but it is, like you said, sometimes, well, a lot of the times, probably not everyone's cup of tea. So it's awesome that you went to something which probably aligned with your goals, aligned with what you're looking for moving forward, where it seems like you want to, especially with the looking at your career now where you're moving to, have an impact on communities, have an impact on individuals. And I think that's super important. So you said you kind of reached where you was at within the rural health west. But when you say you reached the ceiling, what was that ceiling? What did you feel like, for the next role, moving into the next role?
Yeah, I think for me, I had learned so much in that role. I had met some of the best people that I've met in my career, I'm sure of it. And I was in one role and then moved to another one, and it felt a little bit like more of the same. And I'd really built up my foundational skill set in that role. It's where I learned a lot about, health and also a bit of sustainability policy. And by the end of it, I guess it was difficult to see the point sometimes because the tasks again were really repetitive. I knew exactly what was going to happen in my day. I knew that I had to check this system in the morning. I knew that I had to put these expenses through. I knew that I had to call these health professionals, and then my day would be the same the next day. So where I say I capped, it was not necessarily that, I'd become too experienced for the role. It was just more that I'd kind of stopped learning what I wanted to learn. I'm sure, you never stop learning, but it really plateaued for me at that point.
The initial self-evaluation with Marble, figuring it out that you wasn't right for recruitment and recruitment wasn't right for yourself. Rural health, then you moved on to rural health. You realised it's like kind of repetitive. You want a dynamic career, and it's basically you've moved on basically. So you moved on to a contract role with another health provider. Is that right?
So that one was really interesting. So I think that was probably one of the points in my career where I realized that I was a little bit immature, in that I was so desperate to move out of my role at Rural Health West just because I felt like there were other things that I needed to be doing, that I took the first thing that came. I didn't really check if it was right for me. I didn't really check if it was what I wanted my next step to be. I just took it because it was offered to me and I liked one of the people that worked there. And then I got into the role and realized it was not the same content, but much the same in terms of the pace of the role, in terms of the similar stakeholders that you're dealing with. That 6 months was probably one of the hardest 6 months of my professional life, realizing that I'd made a mistake and I didn't know if it was appropriate for me to move on earlier or not. And it had nothing to do with where I was at. It was just more about the place, sorry. It was more about just, I knew that it wasn't right for me, like the week after I got there. And that's so daunting because you can't leave a new job a week into having it. And luckily for me, it was contract, but, you have to figure out ways to stick it out. And I guess plan for your life outside of the role that you've taken on.
Do you feel like when you moved, one of the key information there is you moved from Rural Health West to the hospital? Do you feel like it was like more of a comfortability move for yourself in that time, just because like you mentioned that did you used to work with the individual which you mentioned, or was
yeah, I did. I think it was comfortable, but it was also more about my confidence in my abilities. So I'd been offered another job in the public sector, which we know is really good in terms of stability, and I was really comfortable with that person, but it was more that I was not confident in the fact that I could get a different job, that I probably wanted more. It was a little bit of me immediately settling without, putting myself out there to be rejected from jobs that I wanted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's very good that, you've obviously thought about the move. It wasn't right for yourself. And it's probably a good point, which I'd like to bring up, is like the comfortability piece. And sometimes comfortability is probably, I always say the comfortability crushes the growth, which generally it does. But I think, even though we just take a step back at your career and moving forward, you are making stepping stones in the right direction, finding your feet. And this is fine. Like I said, you was in the exploration stage. And right now, like there were a golden opportunity to utilize your degree, utilize your, what should we say, interests. And then you manage to land employment with your current employer, which is probably one of the big four, right? In your interests. So talk to us about your time at Deloitte.
Yeah. Honestly, so much variety. I feel like the lifespan for consultants sometimes can be between 1.5 years to 2 years, just because, you do work really hard. But I'm still here 3 years later, and I'd love it, honestly. There's so much variety in the work that I do. I will never have a day like I did at, Royal Perth or Royal Health West, where I knew what was happening. You never know. And there's great people as well, because they all care about the same thing that you care about, especially in my team, which is sustainability and climate. And, they also have a lot of investment in their climate and sustainability practice, which is great because you do feel supported, I guess, work on the projects and make the decisions that you make every day.
Perfect. And I think that's super important where you said, some people like I've spoken to even senior members in the market, senior leaders in the market, should I say, who they enjoy the comfortability, and they enjoy the comfortability of their roles, which is basically very predictable.
Mm.
I'd say a lot of people, especially I'm the same as yourself, Deni, where I like a variety, I like unpredictability, uncertainty, and it's that sort of traits which it's probably helped you in your career right now with Deloitte, where you've obviously had 3 positions and each, moving up into that senior management. So just explain, obviously you came on as an analyst. Within a year, you're up for the senior analyst. Is that kind of a traditional promotion, or is that basically because Deni's demonstrated that she's here in the long haul?
Yeah, I think the Big Four is pretty special in that it has pretty common points for promotion. I think that you see that at a lot of consulting firms, which is very different, I feel, to not-for-profits or public sector. So I would say that was, a little bit of a scheduled one, but I was also pretty fortunate to be on a project that pushed me beyond what I ever thought I could do, to be honest. And I had people really backing me in for that. So it was probably a little bit earlier than I was expecting, maybe a little earlier than I felt like I was ready for, but I had my coach at work who backed me in for it, and I think she was right.
Yeah, awesome. That's another key factor there is having a mentor and a coach at work is definitely something which a lot of people talk about. Someone who you can lean on to progress, basically, and throw your hat in the ring. Because especially, if you've gone into a role as a junior or whatever, right, and you don't know sometimes what the expectation is for these larger projects. And I feel like the only people which know that are the people which are leading you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so you're a senior, but then, another 1.5 years passes by and then you become a manager. So are you in people management now? Are you actually leading people now yourself?
Yeah. So it goes across different projects. So you lead projects, but then you also have teams on each of those projects. Yeah.
How are you finding people management?
It's very new. I've only been in this role pretty recently. It's something that you kind of get a taste of when you're in that senior analyst role, just because you are kind of tested to see if you can handle it at that level. Doing it formally as part of my everyday is probably something that it's going to take a while for me to get used to. But I really enjoy it because I really enjoy coaching as well. I've done mentor programs outside of the work where I've been a mentor. I've also been on the other side of it, obviously, being a mentee. But I really enjoy it. But it is new. It is very new. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Strap yourself in, because people management is it's probably the toughest skill to master. But as soon as you get it right, it's probably one of the best skills you can have, especially when you can bring people with you. And like what your manager did for Deni when she was an analyst,
Yeah.
and brought you forward, threw you in a deep end, to be fair, if we actually think about it, you can probably do that to people which you're leading currently as well, which is absolutely awesome.
Yeah. I feel like, especially just on that point, I feel like something that I've really learned over the last, 3 or 4 months has been really makes you think about how you were in that analyst and senior analyst positions. Like when you're earlier on in your career and then you see people doing the same things that you've already learned and you're just like, no, please don't go through this difficult learning like I had to, that you can't rescue people. You have to kind of let them go through that. Really difficult to watch
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
it's you have to let people fall, get back up, because at the end of the day, if you take that away from them, it kind of will stunt their growth as well, won't it? So it's kind of letting them make them mistakes, but sometimes it's in our human nature to try and prevent them to do it. It's kind of a nurture, empathy kind of trait, isn't it? So no, I totally appreciate it. Okay, so let's just finish off your career summary with what are you doing? What is your exact role right now? So what are you handling on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I'm across up to 4 projects on a day-to-day basis. Really what I'm doing is a lot more admin than I used to do before. A lot of stand-up meetings, making sure that people have the right work plan, kind of giving myself enough space in the day to be available for people when a crisis arises or when they need help, which is something that I didn't have to do before. I used to have to just plan my day, get all my tasks done, and then I'd leave. You do have to leave space for people, otherwise you do get overloaded for sure. Working on some really interesting projects in sustainability and nature and climate, and we intersect a lot with some renewables work as well. So it's really diverse, and at any one point you could be across 3 projects that are in completely different areas. But luckily for me, my main area is environmental sustainability, looking at nature and climate as well.
The main question which I've got for yourself before I ask the question from the previous guest, have you found that pip in the step in the industry which you are in now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm flying at the moment. I'm loving it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's super important, to, especially when you're working for one of the big 4, to really enjoy your work and make sure that you, like right now, looking at your career in Deloitte, they're obviously bringing Deni forward and see Deni as a future leader. So it's absolutely awesome to see.
Yeah, it's really great. But the thing is, I will mention that it takes a lot of learning to kind of be comfortable in a role, not comfortable in the sense that it feels nice and I feel, like I'm not learning or anything like that, but more in terms of like, I feel like there's just so much that has happened in those 3 years from when I started to now, where I feel like a little bit of a totally different person, but also feel exactly the same, but more in terms of the resilience that I've built up, which I feel like is absolutely critical. And I tell all the people that I work with, and I think that they'd probably be annoyed if they heard the word resilience again ever in their life. But what's more important than technical skills is your personal resilience, because you can't fix a problem or work on a project if you can't take care of yourself and you can't bounce back from things, because you're always going to have challenges, especially in roles like this. And you've got to figure out a way for you to sustain that momentum rather than having a really good month and then a really bad 2 months. And, it's about finding that consistency, which is what my coach taught me 2 years ago.
Yeah. And that's perfect. It falls in line with the question from the previous guests, which is about a mentor. So everybody has a mentor, whether you think you have or not. What bit of information that you wish you had taken, but you didn't at the time?
There's just so many. I think for me, it's more about the advice that I got given was to be patient and to know also that a lot of things come in time. And for me, I was like, no, they don't. I have to do this. And I pushed myself to the brink, with like training up in things outside of work, working super late, just throwing myself at this job, especially like the first 12 months I was in it, because I felt like I was flying, working late nights, doing all this, which wasn't ever expected of me. And I fixated so much on the fact that maybe I didn't have the right technical background. And I fixated so much on, I wasn't learning fast enough. But now, 3 years later, I feel like that was so right. You actually cannot rush it. Your brain doesn't have capacity to have a master's overnight every night. And that's kind of what I was fixated on for so long, was I needed to be perfect immediately. And I should have just been comfortable with that rather than stress myself out. Yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice that I got given that I ignored.
Just literally done a post about that on LinkedIn because
Oh, really?
I've literally just done a post about just not rushing things, because like the big thing is everyone in their jobs and roles, they try to set the pace, keep going, impress, etc. But a lot of the times when you rush things, you miss things, right? And that's where you start to make mistakes, trip, fall, etc. And sometimes, obviously, you will get back up, which we spoke about resilience there. But yeah, it's just having the patience. And I generally, when I was coaching a few consultancies, having the patience at taking, I used to call it the 1 minute breather. Where I just said, listen, after say a candidate call or a client call, just take 1 minute to input what you've just spoken to the client or candidate about, and just put that in writing. So then at a future date, you can come back to it, evaluate it, etc., and take it from there, as opposed to going.
Yeah, that's the same advice I think that I still get now from the same coach. She'll even, sit me down in a meeting room and go, have you booked time, 15 minutes at the end of your day to just kind of recap on what happened to set yourself up for the next day? And I'm like, yeah, no, I should do that.
I think that's what I'm poor at. I am poor at, say, people talk about it's critical to time block for setting your day up for the current day. So say setting your day up today for tomorrow. I'm pretty poor at that, to be fair. I kind of wing it, if I'm honest with you. So I suppose it's the important things gets done, and the least important tasks are the ones which get pushed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And someone at Marvel used to say, eat the frog, which is do your hardest thing at the start of the day. And I still think of that now, like 4 years later. Or 5 years later.
So I used to get eat the frog and the big hairy task, like that's what they used to say. And I think it is true, like we all keep putting tasks off. It's that task which is going to take maybe 30 minutes to an hour, or even a couple of hours or a morning.
Yeah.
But we keep pushing it back and pushing it back. I do it all the time with little tasks, but the big tasks I just get out of the way. Especially if they're important. It's critical that you get important tasks done in the time. Like I don't have notifications on my emails. I only answer emails at maybe 2 points in the day, because let's be honest, them notification pings can be quite
so distracting. So, I'm forever on do not disturb now. That's the only way I can manage.
My colleague kills me for that, especially on the phone system when I'm not picking up the phones. He always tells me, why are you on D&D? You're missing calls. I said, I know. But awesome. Well, I've got one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. But if looking at your career, Deni, and where you've come from, you've explored the market. You've found that you want to help out community, give back. You're now managing projects, which, let's be honest, if you actually look back at your marble days, when you were recruiting for the D&C market, you're still kind of you're still tied to it if you think about it. So it's a good stepping stone. So you've got to keep evaluating your career like that. But if you was to give advice to, say, another analyst who wants to get into the sustainability and climate change projects and environmental, like your projects at the moment, what's the advice would you give?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like building your foundations for technical skills is great, right? But I think I would go back to like that again, the resilience. But it's not, when I'm looking at who's going to be on my projects, I'm not just thinking about, what is their technical skill set. I'm also thinking about, can this person handle this? And what we see a lot in sustainability and climate at the moment is something that's quite different to other industries where it can be really draining mentally and emotionally because you are dealing with something that's such a big problem and you're thinking about it all the time. You have to look at the climate projections. You have to look at the flood zones that maybe are near your house, right? And it's things that are now your job, not just things that you can look at it on Instagram and then close and then you just don't think about it. So it's really building up for yourself like a level of personal resilience so then you don't crash and burn or get fatigued by the emotional drain that you have in this industry because it can get there. It's like carers fatigue and things like that where you've been too empathetic, you've been too passionate about something and you can't stay consistent in it because it's not sustainable for you to be that level of care or that level of emotional distress looking at some of these things. So I would say investing in that early is so important. And it's not just about, I am now resilient and I'm fine. It's about really exploring what your values are, exploring what really triggers you and just knowing yourself more and then figuring out what that means for how you manage yourself in these situations. Because I did get burnt out about a year into this job because of that exact same thing. And you see it a lot in this industry.
Do you think that's probably the reason why the tenure for analysts is quite low and moving positions? I think you mentioned that the couple of years and then people moved on, or
yeah, I think that generally across consulting for sure, people work so hard and then they leave because they burn out or they get offered very cool opportunities after this, right? But I think specifically for people who work in sustainability and climate, I think that it's not necessarily something that contributes to turnover always because people still want to be in the role healthy, but it's something that contributes to like prolonged burnout. People don't even realize it's coming up behind you and can just honestly, like I'm even talking about decreasing productivity. It just can kind of like ruin you as a person for a few months. It really knocks you out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. It happens in recruitment as well, like including myself. I still burn myself out. To be fair, it's something which I've got to be conscious about at the moment. But going back to your point on that resilience, and I know that you are confident on that, and that's kind of your word which you will tell people. But listen, it's very good in all parts of life is resilience. And I feel like the market at the moment, there's not a lot of resilience, which is something which you do need in every job. But it's like you said, it's self-evaluation. It's knowing your values and then also knowing when to switch off is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it does feel a little bit airy-fairy to say this, but I'm going to be airy-fairy. Something that's more important than anything for your professional career is just you as a person, making sure that you're good, like that you're all good. Because you can't just, be an excellent professional and look amazing on LinkedIn and have an excellent role and feel very proud of yourself in that. But then, go home to like a shell of a person. It's about you as a person. You have to be present for all of the things that make you, not just how cool your job is.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sparing me the time, Deni. It's good to see you again, and I appreciate you jumping on for just sharing your insights on how you've progressed in quite a quick time in the sustainability and climate change.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to see you again.
No dramas. I'll speak to you soon.